League of Legends has over 160 champions. Assuming Project L has a pretty big launch roster, we're talking about something between 20 to 30 characters, which for 2D fighting games is a lot. So less than 20% of these characters will make it into Project L. How do you narrow it down? I must have watched over 20 character prediction videos on YouTube, and everyone has a different method. Some videos are just wish lists, personal opinions, let's not count those as predictions. Others are like character popularity, the most popular characters will make it. That's just wrong. Here are the confirmed characters so far, and here's their popularity rank. Illaoi is number 103, so that's that theory. I've seen predictions based on lore. In fact, my favorite is one from Nicky Boy, where he says that every region from Runeterra should be represented in the roster.
No.
Very cool video, I loved it.
But no.
And to explain why, I made this pie chart. This is the total amount of daily League of Legends players. A total of 13 million players that play the video game every day. And if we zoom in right here, you can see this is the amount of fucks given about the lore. That has changed a little bit because of Arcane, but Arcane barely touches the different regions of Runeterra. And if we're using Arcane as a reference, which I wouldn't blame you, the game's art style resembles Arcane's art style a lot. You could definitely fool me into thinking that this fighting game is based on Arcane alone. But if an Arcane fan comes to Project L without having ever played League of Legends, they're gonna be asking, who the fuck is Darius? What's an Ari? When did Arcane get hentai? Actually, Arcane hentai. Oh yeah, that checks out. No, I don't think they're sticking to Arcane because they've shown characters that aren't there. Maybe they'll be in Season 2 of Arcane, but since we don't even know where Season 2 is going or what characters are going to show up, we can't really predict a roster based on that. There's only one way to narrow down these characters to a fighting game roster, and that's all thanks to the Illaoi character blog, where they revealed how characters are picked for Project L. We start off by deciding which champions we want to pursue. Our ultimate goal is to have a diverse and inclusive roster where everyone can find a champion that truly speaks to them. There are a ton of considerations, such as, but not limited to, fight fantasy, theme, archetype, team synergy, race and ethnicity, personality, identity, size, etc. And while that might sound generic, it does give us a window into their thought process when picking characters. Fight fantasy, theme, archetype, and team synergy can all be boiled down to a character's moveset. So if you look at the characters they revealed so far and compare their movesets to what they are in League of Legends, we can start getting somewhere. So that's exactly what I did for the past 2 days. I've made countless moveset predictions on this channel. Well, I guess you could technically count them. Between Dragon Ball FighterZ and Demon Slayer characters that were coming out to the game or rumored to be DLC, usually there's an anime to pull moves from, and while the predictions were almost never one-to-one, you'd be surprised at how often you'd get a pretty good idea of how characters work. But Project L doesn't have an anime to pull moves from, because not every character has been in Arcane. But they do have League of Legends, the MOBA. So how do they translate movesets? We're not gonna do Katarina. She only showed up here in this shot. We don't have her Project L moves. Ari, if you don't play League, here's how movesets work. Everyone has an auto attack, a passive skill, 3 active skills, and an ult. Ari's skills are a projectile orb that goes forward and then comes back, blue flames that she summons around her that seek the opponent automatically afterwards, and charm, which is a projectile that makes enemies walk towards her. Then we have her ult, where she dashes around, dealing damage. Looking at Project L footage, I've seen at least 3 specials for Ari plus 1 super. So it would make sense that all of her skills in League would be the specials in Project L, and her ult would be her super. Nope. Ari has the blue flames. I've seen the character played without the blue flames active and with the blue flames active, and it seems that she can unleash them at will with a press of a button. One of her assists even seems to unleash all 3 of them at once. I've seen this slow projectile, which you could say it's the same as League, but this one doesn't come back, and that's fine. They could change it a little bit for the fighting game, except she does have the orb that goes and comes back, but that's her super. So they took the skill and made it one of her supers, not a special. Her ultimate in League is probably going to be her signature ability, because it's just a special move in Project L, and it seems super useful. It's this dash that is great for mobility and seems very good in combos too. I've also seen the charm ability, but it's hard to say if that's a special in Project L. It could just very well be her grab animation. And she also has this super, whatever this is. This means they are ready to flip the script and say that these abilities that are powerful in League, these ultimates, might not be as powerful in Project L. They might be demoted to specials, and vice versa. But at the end of the day, you see all of her abilities from League represented in her moveset in Project L. Even if they made up this slow moving orb and this super, that's something that you look at and say, yeah, I believe that Ari would be able to do that. But then we'll look at Darius. Holy crap, is this what League used to look like? They made his spin a combo finisher, and Apprehend is the ability where he pulls the enemy towards him, and that seems to be his signature move. It can be aimed at enemies on the ground or in the air, and you have a couple of follow-ups from it. That said, Crippling Strike is nowhere to be seen. It's this ability in League that just applies a bleed effect or whatever. It just looks like a normal attack. So maybe in Project L it's this follow-up right here, but I think that's a bit of a stretch. What's he gonna have instead of that? Well, they're gonna have to make something up, and they did. He's got this armored shoulder charge completely out of nowhere. I do not know where they pulled this ability from. And also he can hold his attack buttons for bigger hits. I think that's a cool gimmick. I think they did keep his ult, but maybe upgraded it a little bit because it was just a jump and slash down. But now he has this whole spinning up animation before he lands that final hit. But with this character, you can see that they're willing to take abilities out if they don't make sense and replace them with others that you never thought were gonna happen. I mean, I look at Darius and I see a big buff dude with a giant axe. If you tell me that he's got an armored move, I say sure, that makes sense. But if you're a League player, this may seem a bit out of nowhere. Jinx is super interesting because in League she always attacks with either a minigun or a rocket launcher. Her first skill allows her to change between the two weapons, so her auto attack changes. However, in game you see her normal attacks primarily using her own arms and legs and that axe that she pulls out of her butt, and also the pistol she's holding. They saved both the minigun and the rocket launcher for specials. She's got both. I don't know if she has to alternate between the two of them, but it is almost for sure a special move. Her zap skill, which is a long-range skill shot in League that slows opponents down on hit, is almost a one-to-one translation into Project L. Instead of a slow effect, however, opponents will be stunned for a very short time. The Flame Chompers also made it in. In League, it's a trap she leaves on the ground that detonates after a delay, stunning the opponent, but here she will place the trap down and then she's able to attack the trap, moving it forward. And if it hits the opponent, it gets stuck to them and explodes after a delay, which is an amazing translation from MOBA into fighting game. The one thing we're missing is her ultimate from League, the Super Mega Death Rocket. Instead, she has this super right now, which is a powered up version of her zap, but like we've seen with Ahri, these characters probably have more than one super, and there's no way the Super Mega Death Rocket doesn't make it in. It is too iconic. Even if you don't play League and just watch Arcane, you're expecting Jinx to have it. And Echo is the last character we're gonna look at. Oh boy, he's so hard. Echo's skills in League do not translate at all into fighting games. The exception is probably the Time Grenade, which slows down opponents when thrown, and that's exactly what it does in game. If the enemy gets hit, it slows them down, making it possible to extend combos further, but only when it hits from max range, which is exactly how this ability works in League, and that's neat. Everything else, they had to get really creative. In League, he can create a sphere that slows down opponents and even stuns them if he enters the field while an opponent is there. I haven't seen this in Project L at all. I don't know if they're saving it, but right now, there's just no time sphere. He can dash a short distance, which lets him teleport to an enemy within range for his next attack. Now, they did give him the dash ability. Echo can actually roll past an enemy. That's how they represented it, which is cool because he can dash past walls in League of Legends. So that's a nice way of translating it. But here's the thing, he doesn't teleport on his next attack. He does leave behind an after image, which I think mainly comes from his ultimate. In League of Legends, his ultimate creates an after image that he can rewind to at any point, dealing damage with this explosion. Now, they mix this with a tracking attack from the previous skill, which is genius. There's no explosion when you rewind, but you have a few options for a follow-up attack depending on the button you press. So you create an after image, just like the ult, and then you can rewind to that position while throwing a teleporting attack. And I gotta say, some of these attacks track the opponent really well, so they might be referencing that teleport attack that we looked at earlier. And it's not just the roll that leaves the after image behind, there's also this attack called the Chrono Strike. Whenever you use this, it's a good poke, and it leaves behind an after image that you can follow up with any attack as well. So they're making up a few abilities using the after image from the ultimate at its core. And I don't think anyone who's ever seen Echo in action will have any doubt that this is well within his ability. But as you can see, they had to get really creative with the abilities they had. Unfortunately, at this time, we haven't seen any of Echo's supers, not yet at least, so maybe there's still time to have an explosion in there somewhere. But now that we have looked at these characters' movesets in League and how they were translated into Project L, how can we use this information to deduce the types of characters that they're looking for and find out what the roster looks like? It's actually very simple. You can't. Did you not read the title of the video? Still, I thought it was really cool to look at how they adapted these characters from a MOBA into a fighting game. And you know what else is cool? How this game is actually going to change all fighting games in the future. And if you don't believe me, check out this video. Bye!